Proud day for this country. How could it be a proud day when a man who was not elected by the people becomes president of the United States? How does that happen?
Michael Moore just delivered what many are calling the political takedown of the year on live television. Trump's reaction was swift and explosive, a complete meltdown that had viewers glued to their screens. The former president spiraled like a tornado hitting a trailer park, his carefully crafted persona cracking under the pressure of Moore's relentless assault. Moore didn't hold back, systematically dismantling Trump's "I alone can fix it" narrative while exposing his string of golf course bankruptcies and his dangerous obsession with election fraud. It was like watching someone finally tell the emperor he has no clothes, except the emperor threw a tantrum worthy of a toddler denied candy at the grocery store. "Your offshore accounts are your only real success story," Moore quipped, while Trump's MAGA supporters scrambled awkwardly to defend their leader's increasingly desperate expressions. Late-night talk show hosts couldn't contain their glee. The internet erupted immediately. Moore's surgical precision in dissecting Trump's latest tantrum was nothing short of masterful. His closing remarks hit like a precision strike. Your presidency was nothing but an elaborate scam. Trump's predictable response? Playing the victim card once again. The man's ego has reached mythical proportions, creating a Groundhog Day scenario where he's trapped in an endless cycle of rage, posting about Moore being a Marxist while yet another of his precious golf resorts quietly files for bankruptcy. Moore's hard-hitting expose landed with the force of a meteor hitting Earth. The documentary filmmaker touched on something deeply resonant when he addressed the immigration rhetoric that's become so toxic in political discourse. They honestly believe everyday Americans want to hear hatred about immigrants. Moore observed, "But we are immigrants. We're the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of immigrants. Unless you're African American or among the indigenous peoples, we're all products of immigration stories, shaped by generations who had the courage to leave everything behind for a better life." Speaking about immigrants with such vile and hateful language isn't just wrong, it's historically ignorant and shameful. Michael Moore lived out the fantasy of millions of Americans on live television, tearing into Donald Trump without mercy or restraint. By now, watching Trump get demolished on television has become something of a national pastime. But this encounter was different. This was next-level intensity, inescapable and frankly mesmerizing, like watching a demolition crew systematically destroy a building that was already collapsing under its own weight. The satisfaction might last a day, maybe a week, possibly a month, but like the British voters who thought Brexit would send a message only to discover that leaving actually meant leaving, there will be consequences and regrets. Moore has been predicting these exact scenarios for years. He's become something of a political prophet, except instead of robes he wears baseball caps, and instead of ancient prophecies, he fights modern corruption. The moment he decided to target Trump again, you knew fireworks were inevitable. And the results didn't disappoint. The current political landscape reveals how completely out of touch certain factions have become with where most Americans actually stand. The majority of us don't want division or violence. We're perfectly capable of disagreeing without declaring war on each other, but that's apparently where civil discourse should end. Trump has branded himself a stable genius and a business mogul, among other grandiose titles, not to mention a man whose hair often appears to be planning its own escape route. But one thing he definitively is not is someone who handles criticism gracefully. He reacts like a child being told no for the first time. So when Moore hit him with logic, facts, and worst of all, devastating comedy, you could practically hear the Twitter rage machine powering up for another epic meltdown. Moore's systematic takedown played out like a late-night infomercial showcasing Trump's greatest failures, and there was no shortage of material. It was an all-you-can-eat buffet of catastrophically bad decisions, from his mounting legal troubles to the slow-motion collapse of his supposedly billionaire empire. Trump might love buffets, but definitely not the kind served with subpoenas and federal indictments. He certainly wasn't prepared for this particular serving, because nothing screams business genius quite like failed casinos, a fraudulent university, and a steak brand that couldn't survive in America, the land where beef is practically a religion. Let's examine the most obvious train wreck first, Trump's business empire. Financially, it resembles a reality show more than actual commerce. Imagine failing to sell hamburgers and freedom fries in the country that practically worships both. That's like opening a pizza place in New York City and closing because nobody showed up. That's the Donald Trump who preaches capitalism and free enterprise, ideals that have ironically contributed to running his ventures into the ground. This is the mindset he operates from, the belief that you can do whatever you want without considering who might be affected by your actions. That's his fundamental approach to everything, and there's no indication that perspective will shift anytime soon. But he's fully aware of being on television, make no mistake. He's a consummate showman who knows exactly what to say and how to make even failure look appealing to his audience. The question of whether he's completely full of it? Well, let's just say his next moves are definitely calculated for political gain. It's like watching a prolonged slow-motion car crash that somehow keeps getting worse with each passing moment. You'd expect any reasonable person to step back after losing an election, getting impeached twice, and being at the center of one of the most chaotic and disgraceful episodes in recent American history. But that would require a level of self-reflection that Donald Trump simply doesn't possess. He doesn't pick up on social cues or read the room. If anything, he imagines the country is quietly begging for his triumphant return, even as it clearly signals it's had more than enough. Expecting him to take a hint is like expecting his most devoted followers to sit through an unbiased, fact-based history lesson. It's simply not going to happen. After all, why face uncomfortable facts when you can spin the narrative in real time? He understands how to manipulate a population that's been intellectually numbed, where the education system has failed and the media landscape is shallow and uninformative. Under those conditions, swaying voters becomes remarkably easy. He still draws massive crowds and promotes what essentially amounts to a modern form of fascism, blending government and corporate power to benefit a select few while systematically scapegoating others. Typically, when politicians face scandal, lawsuits, and sustained public backlash, they bow out gracefully, write self-serving memoirs, and collect speaking fees. But Trump is anything but typical. Instead of making an elegant exit, he digs in deeper, claiming he's the target of a massive conspiracy involving the deep state, radical progressives, and possibly even the ghost of Abraham Lincoln himself. It might not be the final act of this political drama, but it's certainly theatrical. Trump has elevated conspiracy theories into a legitimate art form. His entire platform is built on manufactured grievances, deliberate misinformation, and the dangerous idea that facts are somehow negotiable. He views losing an election not as democratic defeat, but as evidence of fraud. Impeachment becomes a witch hunt. Criminal indictments transform into proof of persecution. In his carefully constructed reality, defeat is never his fault. Someone else is always responsible, and the system is perpetually rigged against him. His legal troubles are accumulating faster than the number of unpaid contractors he's left in his wake. Criminal charges, civil lawsuits, and federal investigations are coming from every direction imaginable. His behavior since leaving office demonstrates he's completely incapable of accepting irrelevance, which might be the one thing he fears more than actual accountability. His courtroom appearances now outnumber his campaign events, but does that reality slow him down even slightly? Not at all. He weaponizes his legal troubles as fuel to play the victim and further agitate his base. This was a president-elect who seemed fundamentally disengaged from governing, more interested in tweeting about Alec Baldwin's Saturday Night Live impressions hours after they aired than attending national security briefings, of which he managed only a handful during his first month in office. Still, despite everything, he commands the attention of a disturbingly large portion of the population. No matter how frequently he lies, manufactures scandals, or tramples democratic norms, people remain fixated on his every move. It's like reality television, except with genuine real-world consequences that affect millions of lives. And then there's the legal circus, the delicious, never-ending parade of lawsuits and indictments that could sustain its own television series, Trump, Law, and Disorder. Michael Moore wasn't exaggerating when he mocked how absolutely absurd it is that a man facing enough criminal charges to fill a restaurant menu still clings desperately to the narrative that he's the victim of some massive covert operation orchestrated by shadowy forces. This absurdity comes from a legal system that historically allowed war criminals and financial fraudsters to escape consequences, only to suddenly decide the real existential threat is a man with artificial tan and expired coupons. The irony is almost suffocating. Let's examine his legal record more closely. Criminal accusations, civil trials, fraud cases spanning decades. He's collected them like trading cards. One can only imagine his legal team maintains a group chat permanently labeled Code Red Emergency Protocol. Meanwhile, Trump continues insisting that the entire judiciary is fundamentally unfair, as though judges across multiple jurisdictions are randomly pulling names from a hat and his just keeps mysteriously appearing. But there are inevitable consequences to systematically breaking laws, shortchanging contractors, and misusing political donations for personal gain over the years. Eventually, accountability catches up with everyone. Even in Monopoly, there's always a chance you'll land on go to jail.